everybody. So today we are going on a little bit of a road trip. We are heading to my physio session and give you a little bit of insight as to what's been going on with my shoulder and what treatment I'm getting and what exercises I have to do.
So we'll measure your unaffected side, and we've got you set up there. And she measures at about 45. And we measure her affected side. Good. And she measures at about 35. So
What's ideal?
Everyone's different. Females typically have more movement than males.
Really?
They do.
Oh.
We are more mobile and our ligaments are more lax. So typical external rotation range of motion is like 70 to 80 degrees for a normal person. So you
Really?
have a tighter system, and it's really important for things like putting your jacket on, reaching for your seatbelt. So what things do you find you're limited with these days?
Putting on my jacket. Exactly. Taking tops on and off.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Which
this
is how I originally injured it, was taking off a sweaty Lululemon bra top.
That's right. And so overhead movement always involves external rotation. So the interesting thing about your pattern though is your external rotation is more limited down here than it is up here. So if we measured Jen's external rotation and we looked at both sides, we'd say, hey, that looks pretty good. It might feel a bit different, but it looks quite similar.
Yeah.
And then if we do both together at the bottom here, we say, wow, things are really different. So
And they feel different. I feel pain.
do you?
Yeah.
So some pain at the back of the shoulder joint there.
Yeah.
Is there anything into the arm?
Here.
Okay. And that fits this pattern. So an orthopedic physiotherapist will look at this and say, we think that the stickiness in that joint is happening sort of anteriorly and superiorly. So there's a bit of an adhesion probably around the long head of the biceps, the anterior superior capsule. We can't see that, but that's what we think is mechanically happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing with you is as you go out to the side, you get a lot of what I'll say is tightening in the back of the shoulder joint in that infraspinatus muscle group. And that's what's causing some of that posterior lateral pain that you're getting.
Okay.
So that's why we've kind of introduced dry needling to try to improve your movement. It's dry needling time.
Okay.
Let's just get a feel for what this thing looks like. So I'm going to take a look at you at that 0 degree position.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep you in what I think is your neutral, and then watch you come out here. So that's your end range there. If I bring you out here, we get a lot more.
Oh yeah.
So the position of the joints basically stayed the same where my thumb is, but that tells us that restriction in that adducted position matters. And I always think of this as, where's the sticky bubble gum, right? We're kind of taught to think of where's that restriction. And it makes sense that out here things are allowed to sort of relax, but when we come back in here, I kind of see that as being sort of where we want to improve things. And I think that restriction there speaks to that.
Okay.
So we are going to, I'm going to put you on your stomach. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're always really good with the discomfort that we describe with dry needling.
Oh yeah.
But I always like to take a look and ask myself, sort of where do we see or where do we feel some of those restrictions? Because you're getting this impingement back here. And I think when I look at the back of your shoulder, I almost see a line of muscle tissue that's sort of sticking up right underneath the spine of the shoulder blade. So let's get in and see what that feels like first, because we want to hunt down what we're going to consider needling. So there's one of the oblique fibers that comes sort of from the midpoint of the muscle up, and so if we flick over top of this, you can really appreciate that's a really hyperactive area. So that's totally of interest for us. And the other point that I am interested in on the muscle is you always have something going on, like right there. And I think your normal infraspinatus, like muscle tone, is more, like, I think it's more this. So this is supple, I can kind of move on it, and like really it doesn't fight back. So I think the midpoint of the muscle and the top part of the muscle is where we're interested in kind of cleaning things up and releasing some of that tension that's in there. The reason why we're dry needling you is because if I use my hands on you and I want to get in and release some of that tissue, it's stubborn, right? It's difficult, it's really reactive. And so needling, through some of the research, dry needling has been shown to, when you needle through tight muscles like this, cause a couple of pretty interesting changes. So one of them is an electrical change. And the electrical change is when I put this needle into the muscle, there we go. Sort of, well, and it's hard to appreciate, but you can kind of see the muscle. I saw the muscle jump. Jen kind of feels the muscle jump. Yeah. And then my job is to kind of work through that muscle to try to see if I can get it to stop jumping.
Oh.
Ooh, he's really jumping today.
Oh, yeah.
What we know it does is it has an electrical effect. And so when you see that muscle jump like that, what's happening basically is the nerve tissue in the muscle is becoming overreactive. And then as I needle through it and it's less reactive, it's actually resetting some of the nerve tissue at a lower baseline. So it's going from hyperactive, really wound up, contracting, to a little bit more relaxed and not as ready to contract when I stimulate it. So might mean that for you it's a little bit less uncomfortable, but kind of resetting that switch in the muscle is what we're doing right now, just electrically. So that's the first benefit. Your brain right now doesn't necessarily think that this muscle's tight or injured. And so by me putting a needle into that muscle, it alerts your brain. There's a local inflammatory process that happens, and your brain starts to realize that there's an injury here. And so as we needle this, your brain will start to send a chemical response to that area, right? And so some of that chemical response is your inflammatory response. But there's a really neat chemical called platelet-derived growth factor that actually comes to the area and sits within that muscle. And the reason why we care about that is that when a muscle is really tight, it becomes ischemic, which means it has less blood flow in it, and it becomes unhealthy, right? And so platelet-derived growth factor is sort of like a nutritional supplementation for the muscle that helps it basically become healthier. So within the next 48 hours, your body's going to send platelet-derived growth factor to this muscle and help kind of revitalize the health chemically within that muscle. It's filling up with more blood. We can see, and you probably can see even on the camera, that there's a red spot here that's pretty developed, and it's becoming sort of more red over time. Same thing up through here. This spot's a lot more red, and that's, yeah, we can see that more blood flow has come there, and probably that inflammatory response is already starting. But again, that's like a 2-day process, right? And I think it's part of why you get so sore back here is because it's working so hard to try to get you that movement, right? Okay.
It feels like it's way further.
This is 60, right?
Oh,
this
okay.
is 60. This is 45.
Oh,
Okay.
that's not too bad.
No, you're 3/4 of the way to where you should be.
Yeah.
But the feel of that's totally different, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try your stick exercise for a minute. Let's measure you one more time before we friction the front of your joint. When I was doing my master's, well, before I did my master's, I used to friction kind of like this. So then one of the profs that I was doing my master's with said, "No, Cheryl, do you know what the research said, how much pressure they say to do on frictions?" And I said, "No, I thought this was good enough. This is what we learned in school." And she said it's this. So you can actually see that I'm flicking over top of it.
Oh, yeah, totally feel it.
And then the studies say that you're supposed to do this for 10 minutes.
So I thought today I'd share with you one of the exercises that I'm doing for physio, just because it's so interesting and I find it very helpful, but it's not without pain, that's for sure. And I'm certainly not prescribing anything. This is not me telling you what you should do for your shoulder. This is just me sharing what I'm doing for my shoulder. So you need to see your physio. So I'm going to lock my elbow into place using this long, skinny rubber band. So I'm just going to loop my elbow in there, wrap it around the back, and that's going to tuck my elbow in nice and close. I'm pulling it in, laying back onto the band. Now here we have the other end of the band, right? So I'm just going to put my foot in there, and that's just going to rest on my knee and lock my elbow into place. So I don't have to worry about that. Now I am using my walking stick. So I'm just going to put that in my palm, and I'm just going to, you know, with a good amount of force, but not over the top, push my hand towards the floor. And I'm supposed to do this, well, 20 or 30 times, working the range. Now I do it about the same, but at 30 degrees. Place my elbow about 30 degrees out from my side. Everything else remains the same. And this is the easiest, so I can work it a little bit deeper. So that is what I'm doing for my shoulder. Holding on to the insides of the band with my hands internally rotated and taking it overhead and just giving a nice stretch. Also, put my hand in the band, take it over my shoulder and draw that hand up behind my back, to stretch out the front of my shoulder right here. And again, I try not to overdo it, but just until I feel a nice stretch. I think that's it. So I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel where you get more information on health, fitness, and lifestyle. Have a super day.